This video from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, U.S. Department of Commerce, is an overview of the BE-10A form of the 2014 Benchmark Survey of U.S. Direct Investment Abroad. In this video, you will learn the purpose of the BE-10A survey form, basic filing requirements, and general instructions for reporting data. Finally, we will cover specific form instructions, including differences between the BE-11A annual survey form and the BE-10A benchmark survey form. The BE-10 benchmark survey of U.S. direct investment abroad is conducted by BEA to obtain economic data on the operations of U.S. parent companies and their foreign affiliates. The BE-10A is the survey form used for collecting information on U.S. parent companies. Data are collected annually from U.S. companies with larger foreign affiliates on the BE-11 survey form. Every fifth year, data are collected from U.S. companies with both large and small foreign affiliates on the BE-10 survey form. A BE-10A report is required of any U.S. person that had a direct or indirect ownership interest of at least 10% of the voting stock in a foreign business enterprise at any time during the U.S. person's 2014 fiscal year. The word person, when used in this video, is a legal term that means any individual, branch, partnership, associated group, association, estate, trust, corporation, or other organization, and any government. U.S., when used in a geographic sense, is the 50 states, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and all territories and possessions of the United States. A U.S. reporter is any U.S. person that had direct investment in a foreign affiliate at any time during the U.S. person's 2014 fiscal year. A foreign affiliate is any foreign business enterprise located outside the United States in which a U.S. person had a 10% or more voting interest. If the U.S. reporter is a corporation, please complete Form BE-10A to cover data for the fully consolidated U.S. domestic enterprise, consisting of the U.S. corporation whose voting securities are not owned more than 50% by another U.S. corporation, and proceeding down each ownership chain from that U.S. corporation, any U.S. corporation whose voting securities are more than 50% owned by the U.S. corporation above it. In the example shown, U.S. corporations B, C, and D are consolidated on one BE-10A form and are considered one U.S. reporter, because U.S. Corporation B owns more than 50% of U.S. corporations C and D. U.S. Corporation A is not considered to be part of the consolidated U.S. domestic enterprise, and therefore should not be included on the BE-10A, because it does not own more than 50% of the voting stock of U.S. Corporation B. The foreign affiliate is not included in the consolidation because it is located outside of the United States. If two or more U.S. reporters jointly own a foreign affiliate, directly or indirectly, each U.S. reporter must file a Form BE-10A. In the example shown, the three U.S. reporters each own more than 10% of the foreign affiliate and therefore must each file separate BE-10A forms. Because the BE-10A is only filed every 5 years, some respondents may be seeing this form for the first time. We would like to give you some helpful background information about each part of the BE-10A. Part 1 covers items that help identify the U.S. reporter. This includes items such as the form of organization, the fiscal year end date, and the major activity of the fully consolidated U.S. reporter. Now we'll take a closer look at the instructions for Item 11, which addresses reporters who file multiple BEA surveys. A U.S. reporter that is owned by a foreign parent and also has affiliates abroad may be required to report on both the BE-15 Annual Survey of Foreign Direct Investment in the United States and the BE-10 Benchmark Survey of U.S. Direct Investment Abroad. This is true if the U.S. business enterprise owns 10% or more of at least one foreign affiliate, and is also owned 10% or more, directly or indirectly, by a foreign person. Depending on which BE-15 form a foreign-owned U.S. reporter files, it may not have to complete the entire BE-10A form. A U.S. reporter required to file a 2014 BE-15B or C form which are the shorter forms for the BE-15 survey, should complete the entire Form BE-10A. But filers of the 2014 BE-15A form should only complete certain items within the BE-10A. Refer to Item 11 for the specific items to be completed. Part 2 covers sales and employment by industry classification. Report sales or gross operating revenue, excluding sales tax, associated with each industry code. List the industries in order of largest to smallest in terms of sales. Then report the employment associated with each industry in column 3. For most companies, the employment distribution in column 3 is not proportional to the sales distribution in column 2. Therefore, do not distribute employment in proportion to sales. Part 3 covers contract manufacturing activities. These questions are only included in benchmark surveys. Contract manufacturing services involve contracting with a firm to process materials and components, including payment for fabricating, assembling, labeling, and packaging materials and components. In this section, information is collected about contract manufacturing services purchased and performed by the U.S. reporter. For purchased services, we also collect material ownership information and the location of contract manufacturers. The last section of Part 3 covers the size of the U.S. reporter. This section will determine whether the U.S. reporter needs to complete the entire form or only part of the form. If the assets, sales, or net income of the U.S. reporter, positive or negative, is greater than $300 million at the end of 2014, then the U.S. reporter needs to complete the entire BE-10A form. If the sales, assets, or net income of the U.S. reporter, positive or negative, are all smaller than or equal to $300 million at the end of 2014, then the U.S. reporter needs to complete only items 1 through 42 and 97 through 114 of the form. Part 4 covers selected financial and operating data of the U.S. reporter, including net income or loss, total assets, and total liabilities. This section should only be completed by the smaller U.S. reporters that answered no to item 36, because their assets, sales, and net income were all $300 million or less. For U.S. reporters that indicated in item 36 that their assets, sales, or net income were greater than $300 million, report full financial and operating data in Part 5. Section A covers the income statement. When completing this section, keep in mind that generally accepted U.S. accounting principles should be used, unless otherwise specified in the instructions. One such instance is item 45. Carefully review the list of items to be included in certain gains and losses, as they may deviate from what is normally required by U.S. GAAP. Net income should correspond with 10K worldwide consolidated amounts. However, some components of the income statement will differ from the 10K amounts. One reason that some financial data reported on the BE-10A will not agree with the amounts reported in the 10K is due to the reporting of equity investments. There are only 3 places that equity investments should be accounted for on the BE-10A. The first is in item 44. Report income from equity investments in item 44. The U.S. reporter should not consolidate foreign investments no matter what the percentage ownership is, but should include foreign holdings owned 20% or more using the equity method of accounting. Equity investments in unconsolidated U.S. affiliates, that is, affiliates owned 20 to 50%, should also be reported using the equity method of accounting. Section B of Part 5 covers the distribution of sales, or gross operating revenues. Total sales reported earlier in the form are disaggregated into 3 categories: sales of goods, sales of services, and investment income. When a sale consists of both goods and services and cannot be unbundled, classify the sale as goods or services based on whichever accounts for a majority of the value. When reviewing your survey data, BEA staff will compare the information you report in this section to information you reported on sales by industry in Part 2. Section C of Part 5 covers employment items. report the number of U.S. employees on the payroll at the end of fiscal year 2014, including part-time employees, but excluding temporary and contract employees not included on your payroll records. If the number of employees at the end of fiscal year 2014 was unusually high or low due to temporary factors, enter the number of employees that reflects normal operations. Section D of Part 5 covers the balance sheet. Similar to the income statement, generally accepted U.S. accounting principles should be used, unless otherwise specified in the instructions. When reporting balance sheet data, be sure to disaggregate all asset and liability items in the details shown. For example, show accounts receivable and payable between the U.S. reporter and its foreign affiliates, and the proper asset and liability accounts of the U.S. reporter. Equity investments, as discussed earlier, should be accounted for in items 64 and 65 on the balance sheet. Section E of Part 5 covers property, plant, and equipment. An expanded PP&E reconciliation is another benchmark surveys only section. The annual survey requires only current year PP&E expenditures to be reported. The closing 2014 net book PP&E value should equal the amount reported in item 63 on the balance sheet. Section F of Part 5 covers interest, production royalty payments, and taxes. When completing items 82, interest income, and 83, interest expense, do not net interest income against interest expense. Include intercompany interest and expense amounts between the U.S. reporter and its foreign affiliates. Include capitalized interest expense in item 83. When completing item 85, the amount reported as taxes should not include income taxes and payroll taxes. Section G of Part 5 covers banking industry activities. Complete this section only if you reported sales for ISI codes 5221 or 5229. Section H of Part 5 covers insurance industry activities, including premiums earned and losses incurred. Complete this section only if you reported sales for ISI codes 5243 or 5249, which represent insurance and life insurance carrier activity. Section I of Part 5 covers research and development related items. More detail in R&D is collected on the benchmark survey than on the annual survey. When reporting expenditures, include all costs incurred to support R&D, but exclude expenditures for market research and costs for routine product testing and quality control. Please note that items 91 to 95 refer only to R&D performed by the U.S. reporter and not total R&D expensed. Report R&D performed for the U.S. reporter by others in item 96. The last section of the form, Part 6, covers U.S. exports and imports of goods by product and by region, and U.S. imports of goods by intended use. Exports and imports shipped to and by foreign affiliates in column 2 should correspond to the export and import data reported on the foreign affiliate B and C forms. The sum of trade data by destination should equal the total value of goods shipped to and by the U.S. reporter to other foreigners in column 3. Be sure to only include goods that physically left or entered the United States. Do not include services. If you have any questions about completing a BE-10 survey, please contact the BE-10 staff at 202-606-5566. For additional information on the BE-10 survey, including video tutorials, blank forms, instructions, and the e-file system, please go to www.bea.gov/DIA.